World of Warcraft is the MMORPG. It doesn't matter what came before it or what will come after. Its name alone carries a lot of weight, not just in the gaming community, but in pop culture as a whole.
Alright, you guys, this is it. When the attack begins, all warriors click on defensive stance.
You called the police because someone hacked your World of Warcraft account?
What choice did I have?
Over the years it has grown and changed, and I feel that it's really stepped away from what it originally was. The game that initially captured the hearts not just of those who were longtime fans of the Warcraft universe, but also newcomers who had no prior knowledge or maybe even interest in the world. To get into the fashion and cosmetic possibilities in the modern version of World of Warcraft would be no small feat, and it is one that I personally am not fully qualified to undertake, as I actually quit the current version of the game in Legion. Today I want to take us back to Classic, namely the Classic to Wrath era, and dig into the cosmetic items before we had transmogrification. I would say that these humble beginnings actually had a lot of influence on the character customization that we see in the game today. Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelika. I've been forced to take a break from reading the Elder Scrolls this week. It's really been taking a toll, and all this time I thought the monks were putting on an act. Anyway, today I'll be taking you to Azeroth. I put a lot of thought into how I wanted to structure this video, as there really is a lot of clothing in World of Warcraft, so instead of doing it as we had done in my previous videos with robes, shirts, pants, etc., I decided that we're going to look at it from a broader view. We will be breaking it down as follows. Starter gear, seasonal event clothing, tailor-made or craftable items, tabards, and miscellaneous. Now, I have mentioned in my previous videos in this series that we're looking at items that are strictly cosmetic and that offer no real armor value. For this video, I've decided to make a small exception, and I will explain to you what that is in the starter gear category. So, why am I including starter gear at all? Two reasons. First of all, many of the pieces included in the starter gear are actually strictly cosmetic, and they don't offer any real armor value, even if they are mixed with other pieces that do. The second reason is that when I first started playing World of Warcraft, I was 6 years old and I did not speak any English. I didn't choose my class based on what role I wanted to play or how useful I would be in the end game. I didn't consider the racial benefits of a class/race combo to become a PvP sensation. I went strictly by what the characters looked like. I'm sure I'm not the only one that chose them this way, at least for the very first time. Now, in the modern character creation, you're essentially shown two versions of the characters. So, one wearing the gear that you will get if you have a paid character boost, and the other is if you're starting from level 1 without any boost. Back in Classic, you could only see one version of the character as you created them, and I really enjoyed the simplicity of it. It made you feel like you're actually coming from humble beginnings. There's not a lot going on for your character at the time, and it made progression and the obtainment of higher level and better looking items all the more rewarding. I really think that the less is more approach applies here, because when you really look through all of the gear, it's quite memorable. Each piece is unique, even if it is just a recolor with a slight difference, and this made each of the classes stand out, it made them special, and it also highlighted the characteristics of a particular class right off the bat. It was cool to be making your way through the starter zone and kind of from a distance know and see exactly which class was coming towards you. And actually for that reason, I really enjoyed swapping my starter gear with a different class. So it was all cloth, so every class could wear all of the starter gear. And I don't know, there was something kind of cool and forbidden about a priest wearing rogue gear, even if it was for like just the first 10 minutes of playing. They also didn't take the easy approach and have like a blanket set of starter gear for like that particular class regardless of race or faction. The gear was different depending on race, and then of course factions. Horde and Alliance did not share any of the same starter gear, except of course for Death Knights later on in Wrath of the Lich King. Here we can see an example for the warrior gear between orcs and humans, here we can see the warlock gear between humans and undead, and here we can see the rogue gear. For some differences within a particular faction, here is the contrast between humans/dwarf priests with night elf priests. So they actually took care to consider cultural differences, and the night elves, they are based on a different continent, so the white priest robes wouldn't really suit them or their environment, and I appreciate that they took the extra step to create separate robes for them. I want to throw in that my favorite set of starter gear was the druid set for the night elves. This was actually the first character that I ever created, and these robes have been like etched in my brain ever since. I've always loved them. Let me know in the comments what your favorite WoW starter gear is and why. Let's move on to seasonal event clothing, and this is a very big category. The first events in WoW were introduced as early as its first year of release, and so the cosmetic items associated with each event have been around for a very long time. Just a disclaimer, some of these items are technically craftable, which I have set craftable items as a separate category, but because they were only acquirable during that particular festive period, period, I've decided to group them in here. Let's start from the beginning of the year, where in the first days of January we saw the Feast of Winter Veil come to a close. This event would start in the middle of December, and it goes on for a couple of weeks, in which time it is possible to get your hands on the Santa outfits, or as they're called in game, winter garb, available in both red and green. To complete the set, you needed 3 items: the green or red winter hat, the green or red clothes, and the winter boots, which just came in black. Now, the clothes and the boots were the most straightforward, so you could purchase the clothes pattern from one of the Smokywood Pastures vendors from either Ironforge or Orgrimmar, and for the boots, all leather workers received a pattern in the mail, so it was a matter of just having the skill and materials to craft them. You could also, of course, purchase them from the auction house if another player had listed them. Now, speaking of the winter hat, this was an entirely different matter. One could not simply purchase the hat from the auction house, as it was a bind on pickup or BOP item. This meant that when picked up by a player, this hat would become immediately soulbound to that player without even having worn the item, and then they couldn't trade it with other players, put it up on the auction house, or even send it to an alt character on their own account. Both the green and red hats could drop from bosses during the course of the Feast of the Winter Veil, and they could even drop from some random mobs out in the world. I discovered this first when leveling in Tearsful Glades with my brother, who unfortunately ended up winning the role for the green winter hat. The full outfit actually appears different on male or female characters, so with the male character you get like the full suit, you're fully covered and protected against the chilly winter air, and then the female characters got a much more open version of the outfit. It's not really super practical for the harsh winter weather, and really, I could sit here and complain about how RPGs in general would do this and design female clothing / armor in that particular way while the male characters are fully covered, but I will admit that this outfit was actually quite cute, and I don't even care. It was a statement back in the day, and I love it for that. Next, let's take a look at the Lunar Festival, incorporating parts of the aesthetics, decorations, and traditions that are typically present in the celebration of the Lunar New Year. This event introduced some of the most striking and beautiful cosmetic items in the game, and they were the festive suits and dresses. The dresses were available in red, green, purple, and pink, and the suits were available in red, black, teal, and blue. The red dress and suit had to be crafted, and the pattern could be purchased from the Moonglade event vendor in exchange for coins of ancestry. The coins were obtainable through speaking with elders, who would offer them to you as quest rewards, and the elders were scattered all over the world. Note that the patterns for making the red suit and dress were BOP, but the actual dress and suit were not, and so they could be sold to other players on the auction house. The rest of the colors could be exchanged directly for the coins of ancestry, and you did not need to craft them. However, they were BOP. The hardest choice for me was always between the pink and purple festive dresses. I love that World of Warcraft is already a very bright game with a lot of bright colors, and they still found a way to create something that stood out from all of that. Unlike the winter clothes, these appeared the same on both genders, and they didn't change. Let's move on to the Love is in the Air event, which, by the way, perfect timing for this video. Have you all got a Valentine yet?
What am I saying? Of course you don't.
Sorry, too soon. This is of course the Valentine's Day event, which would start about a week before the 14th and go on for about 2 weeks in total. This event brought us the iconic lovely dresses. So the dresses came in 4 colors. You had the lovely black dress, the lovely red dress, lovely blue dress, and the lovely purple dress. When I tell you I was obsessed with these, like, to me this was it. This was peak character customization. It didn't get any better. I didn't want or need anything else. Looking back on it now, it kind of looks like that BBL fashion that was like a trend for a while, but you know what, at the time, I really liked it, okay? The dresses could be obtained by purchasing a lovely dress box from a lovely merchant in one of the major cities, and you could get it in exchange for 20 love tokens. The tokens were a currency unique to this event, and they could be acquired through the completion of various event quests or in exchange for charm bracelets. The charm bracelets had to be created with 10 lovely charms, which could be obtained from any, quote, worthwhile enemies or honorable kills, and to collect those, you needed a lovely charm collector's kit, which you could get from the Petal Feet NPCs in the capital cities. So there's quite a lot to this, but I say the payoff was worth it. Except, when you get the lovely dress box, you don't get to choose what color dress you get. So they all have a 25% chance of dropping, which means that you're likely to get repeat colors if you get the box several times. That's a bit disappointing, but the upside with this was that the dresses are BOE, so you could sell them on the auction house. And on that note, if you're really not into the grind and getting all these boxes, like, you could also just purchase it from the auction house. Depending on your server, However, the prices for these dresses could be extortionate, and as somebody that played on Argent Dawn EU for a very long time, I can tell you that one for free. This, however, made them all the more appealing to me, and I was very excited when my night elf first got one of these dresses. My first one was actually blue. I wanted the red or the black, but you know what, I was happy that I got one at all. Similar situation with the dinner suits that came out for this event also. Back in the day, you'd see all the bank alts standing around the mailbox in this. The Forever Lovely Rose was introduced in a late Wrath of the Lich King patch, and during the Love is in the Air event, this rose could be obtained by killing Apothecary Hummel in Shadowfang Keep. It had a pretty low drop chance, and it appeared different from male and female characters, so the males would actually have the rose in their teeth, and the girls would have it behind their ear. For a handheld cosmetic, you had the bouquet of red or ebony roses, and those could be obtained via drop from specific bosses in Wrath instances. Now let's talk about the Noble Garden or the Easter event. So this event was specifically centered around the Gregorian calendar Easter, which is the one that like the Western Christians use to calculate Easter. Orthodox Christians, like myself, use the Julian calendar to calculate Easter, and though it sometimes may fall on the same day as the Western date, this year it's actually going to fall on the 5th of May, which is more than a month apart from the 31st of March. So that's just like a fun fact if you didn't know. So speaking of cosmetics, here we got the iconic spring tuxedo set. The white tuxedo shirt and black tuxedo pants could be looted from brightly colored eggs during the Noble Garden event. However, there is also tuxedo shirt and tuxedo pants, which could be obtained via crafting with a pattern that can be purchased from vendors all year round. Along with that, you could also purchase a pattern for the tuxedo jacket, which isn't part of the cosmetic items for the Noble Garden event, but since it looks the same, like it goes perfectly with that set. You then have the spring robes, which could be purchased using the event-specific currency known as Noble Garden chocolates that you could get out of brightly colored egg, and you could also get it from a brightly colored egg. My favorite item that you could obtain during this event were the elegant robes, which could also be looted from a brightly colored egg. These actually look exactly the same as the white wedding dress, but it's pink, and now that I think about it for Noble Garden, it seems like they kind of did go for like a bit of a wedding type vibe. So here's my theory on that. You know how for Valentine's Day a couple months prior you had like the dinner suits, you know, you're just in the dinner stage, you're going out, well then by Easter you're already getting married, so I think that that's probably what they were going for. Maybe not. The head items for this event were really cute, and they were the bunny ears or the spring circlet. You had the black spring circlet that was only obtainable via the event vendor, and the pink spring circlet, which was the same, only through a vendor, and then the spring circlet, which you could get equally from a vendor or you could loot it from an egg. For the handheld cosmetic items, you could get the spring flowers from either an egg or one of the vendors, and you could actually use this item to place rabbit ears on somebody, which I would say that's BIS for any class, but that's just my opinion. Up next, we'll be looking at the Summer Solstice event known as the Midsummer Fire Festival, which actually added a lot of cool stuff. So first of all, you had the Midsummer Reveler set, which consisted of the mantle of the Fire Festival, the vestment of summer, and the sandals of summer. All of these items were obtainable from the event-specific vendors in exchange for the Burning Blossom currency. And this particular currency can be gotten by visiting the large bonfires at the major cities. You'd actually get more of them if you visited a bonfire from the opposite faction city. My all-time favorite item that you can get from this event is the Crown of the Fire Festival. To get it, you must do a quest where you first steal the flame from each of the opposite faction cities, and then this gets you another quest called the Thief's Reward. This then lets you go to the Fire Festival Master and he gives you the crown. It was amazing. I absolutely loved this item. There was another cosmetic head item called the Helm of the Fire Festival, which actually isn't technically part of the Reveler set, but it does match with the mantle. I never really cared for it too much. It did look a little bit silly, and again, it could be purchased from the vendors. They also added a tabard in this, so it was the Tabard of Summer Flames and the Tabard of Summer Skies, and I believe you could choose one of these as a reward for one of the event quests. Let's take a look at Brewfest, and this is probably one of my favorite in-game events. This event is of course based on Oktoberfest, and in World of Warcraft the main center for this event is Dun Morrow. Now, who if not the dwarves would be the pioneers for this sort of celebration? I know the Horde have their version in Durotar, but in my headcanon they adopted it from the dwarves. They had to have. This event brought us the Brewfest garb, which consisted of the Brewfest regalia or the Brewfest dress, the Brewfest boots or the Brewfest slippers, and the different colored Brewfest hats, which were purple, green, brown, and blue. As long as you were wearing 3 of these pieces together, you were in full Brewfest garb. I always thought that these were very well designed and they look exactly like what is worn by people who go to Oktoberfest. All of these items could be exchanged for Brewfest prize tokens with the specific event vendors, and the prize tokens themselves were obtained via participation participation in the various activities that came as part of the Brewfest, which for me honestly were some of the more fun activities out of like any event, especially with the ram racing. An honorable mention here are the eyesight enhancing goggles, which are meant to make look everyone attractive when you put them on. So if you play Alliance and you get them from Belby, everyone turns into male gnomes, and if you get them from Blix on the Horde side, everyone turns into female orcs. Now for my favorite event in game and in real life is Hollow's End, or Halloween. This event actually didn't bring us a whole lot on the clothing front, nothing actually in terms of cosmetic items other than masks of the faces of all of the races available in both genders, which you could mostly get from trick-or-treating at inns around Azeroth. The rest of the cosmetic items was covered by wands, which would turn you into various creatures. Pilgrim's Bounty is an event that I've always felt a little bit disconnected from because I live in Ireland and Thanksgiving isn't a thing here at all. As for the cosmetic items, you had the Pilgrim's clothing consisting of the Pilgrim's hat, Pilgrim's attire, Pilgrim's dress, Pilgrim's robe, and Pilgrim's shoes, all of which could be obtained via event-specific quests. They're not really my personal favorites, but I did enjoy the turkeys that would walk around and make noises during this event, so I guess that kind of made up for it. So this pretty much covers all of the event clothing that we had. Let's take a look at the cosmetic items that tailors could make. As an avid mage player, I would often become a tailor, so I remember all of these quite well. Some required special patterns that you had to purchase in order to learn how to make them, such as the white wedding dress, which very oddly had a requirement of level 13 to wear, and then you had the items that you learned from your profession trainer directly as you leveled up your skill. As a tailor, you could create a wide selection of shirts, which would go with their own shirt slot, not the main chest slot. This included things like the swashbuckler shirt, the stylish shirts, the mage weave shirts. I liked that you could pair shirts with armor, that it wasn't just in the same slot, because for some pieces of armor you could actually see underneath, and so having a shirt there would make certain pieces look more unique. You could also create cosmetic chest items, such as the simple black dress, the white woolen dress, and the simple dress. And this one apparently makes you feel pretty when you put it on. These are mostly a stepping stone to level up your tailoring further, although to be honest, they may have been too demanding with materials, so you would probably create like one of each for the fun of it, and then spam create like the same belt or cloak to level up using minimal mats. I personally enjoyed being able to create my own cosmetic items, however limited they may have been. Tabards are a very interesting item slot as a whole for me, which is why I've put them in their own category for this video. Let me know in the comments if you've played other games where tabards work the same as they do in WoW. I personally can't think of any, which is why I always thought this was quite unique and interesting. So the main tabards that you will acquire will be things like the guild tabard, which is fully customizable by the guildmaster, and I always thought this was great to kind of allow guilds to stand out and be creative with the customization that was available. Some guilds didn't have very good tabards, and so I mostly wouldn't wear them over my gear, but if they hadn't paid the 10 gold at all to design them, then the tabard would actually appear blank. PvP tabards such as the Scout's tabard or the Private's tabard for the Alliance were also some of the more prominent ones. I always thought they looked really cool, and they weren't the hardest in the world to get, so I would do some PvP quite early on new servers just to get the tabards. Another honorable mention here is the tabard of the Scarlet Crusade, which drops in the Scarlet Monastery. My fondest memory of this was when my brother got it, created a guild called the Scarlet Crusade on an RP server, and then got reported by some professional role players. This actually resulted in a Blizzard Game Master reaching out directly to my brother and getting him to change his guild name, so because it was bad roleplay, which is wild. Finally, for Miscellaneous, I wanted to take a look at the items that were obtainable through vendors or things that weren't really all that significant, but you could sometimes see them on the auction house for crazy prices. So to start, I specifically remember the Canal Tailor and Fit Shop in Stormwind, where the vendor sold a number of items including shirts and two really expensive items, which was the Royal Dangui, I think that's how you pronounce it, for 24 gold, and another is a green wedding handbok for about 5 gold. Completely unjustifiable prices. Now the white traditional handbok was where it was at for me, so I would purchase this one quite early on for every character I had. It didn't matter that I then didn't have any money for spells or anything else. I had this and it was Biss, so like who cares? If you went to the auction house, you would find things such as the Noble's Monocle, again for crazy prices, or things like the Battered Jungle Hat, and I think both of those could be obtained through fishing. Another popular item that you would see here is the Blood Elf Bandit Mask, which I would often see listed on the auction house for no less than 5,000 gold. The beauty of this mask was that it could be worn by everybody, and it wasn't BOE or BOP, so you could wear it, send it to an alt, or give it to a friend, or sell it. Getting it was a bit tough, so you had to farm the Blood Elf Bandits on Azure Mist Isle, and the drop chance was sort of low. Their spawns were scattered all over the island. To be honest, I've only ever farmed this item once in all my 16 years of playing this game. A similar and easier item to get was the Red Defias mask, which dropped quite frequently off of the Defias mobs in Westfall, but the downsides were that it could only be worn by rogues and it was BOP. So you had to farm it if you really wanted it, and if your friend picked it up by accident, well then you'd have to like /ignore them forever. Another example of some miscellaneous cosmetics can be found in a place like the Fragrant Flower Shop in Stormwind. So the florist sold mostly held in offhand flowers, and the most notable of those was the bouquet of black roses for 42 gold, and the red rose, as well as the bouquet of white roses. And this, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our clothing in WoW overview. I know that some of the items mentioned weren't actually clothing, but I felt that they were all so well designed that it's sort of a shame to just have them overlooked all the time. I also know that this channel started out with Elder Scrolls, and while there's a lot more Elder Scrolls content coming, I also want to share things about other games that I like, because at the end of the day, it's more than likely that most of you here play more than just 3 games, and so that way we can learn more about each other and the games that we've in common. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and thank you for stopping by. Safe travels!